You know that feeling when you're standing in your backyard on a Saturday morning with a coffee and your lawn just looks rough. Patchy over here, thin over there. Yellow stretches near the driveway you've been trying to fix for 2 summers running, and you can't quite figure out why because you've done everything you were supposed to do. You put down fertilizer in the spring, you've got sprinklers running on a schedule, you've tried Scott's, maybe a few other brands, and every year it looks better for about 3 weeks and then slides right back to exactly where it started. Here's what I want you to consider, and I'll keep this simple. What if the products aren't fixing the problem? Because the products are the problem. Not in a conspiratorial way, just in a practical one. What if the fertilizer you've been applying is keeping your lawn dependent instead of building it to take care of itself? What if the daily watering is actually training your grass to have shallow roots that can't survive without it? Because that's exactly what the science shows. And it's exactly what a very different way of managing land, one that kept Asian farmland productive for 4,000 years without a single bag of synthetic fertilizer, figured out long before we did. This channel is called The Chinese Method. We're here to bring back the old, practical, kitchen-to-garden knowledge that the modern world quietly shelved in favor of selling you something every season. If you're new here, subscribe now, because what's coming on this channel is going to change how you think about your home and garden in ways that are genuinely useful. Now, let's fix your lawn. For real this time. Here is what most people believe about lawn care, and it's completely understandable because it's what every bag, every advertisement, and every garden centre employee has been telling us for 60 years. The belief is this: the grass needs to be fed, so we feed it. We apply nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the NPK on the back of every fertilizer bag. The grass responds. It goes green. It looks great for a few weeks, and we feel like we've done something right. But here is what's actually happening under the surface, and this is the part nobody tells you about. Synthetic nitrogen, the kind in the vast majority of lawn fertilizers, does not build soil. It bypasses soil entirely. It feeds the blade of grass directly, chemically, like a caffeine hit. The grass surges. It looks good. But the microorganisms living in your soil, the bacteria, the fungi, the billions of tiny organisms that are actually responsible for building healthy, resilient ground, those organisms are not being fed. In many cases, the salt content in synthetic fertilizers is actively harmful to them, so the soil itself gets weaker over time, it compacts, it loses its ability to hold moisture. And because compacted, biologically depleted soil dries out quickly, the roots of your grass have no reason to grow deep. Why would they? There's nothing down there worth reaching for, so the roots stay shallow. And shallow-rooted grass is fragile grass. It browns in heat, goes patchy in dry spells, and cannot cope without constant watering. So you water constantly. And because the soil biology is depleted and the grass is dependent, the fertilizer stops working as well as it used to, so you apply more. This is the loop, and this is where most people get permanently stuck. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because nobody told them the loop existed. Once you're in it, it genuinely feels like your lawn just needs all of this. Like this is simply what grass requires. But it isn't. And I can show you why with a book that was written in 1911. In 1911, an American soil scientist named Franklin Hiram King, who had previously been the head of soil management at the United States Department of Agriculture, spent an entire year traveling through China, Japan, and Korea, studying how farmers there worked their land. What he found astonished him. These were not farmers with access to synthetic chemicals. There was no Scott's. There was no NPK in a bag. No irrigation systems fed by industrial pumps. And yet the land they were farming, in many cases the same land their families had farmed for 40 centuries, was still producing abundant, healthy crops. The same land. 4,000 years. Still fertile. He wrote all of this down in a book called Farmers of 40 Centuries, and it remains one of the most important agricultural documents ever written, even now, over 100 years later. The core philosophy behind everything he observed across 3 different countries, across hundreds of farms, came down to one principle. Nothing organic is ever wasted. Everything that comes from the land goes back to the land. Grass clippings, kitchen scraps, plant material, it all goes back into the soil, not because these farmers were being tidy, because they understood something that took Western agriculture almost another century to rediscover through science. They understood that the soil is alive. Healthy soil is not just dirt, it's a living ecosystem. Billions of microorganisms per teaspoon, working constantly to break down organic matter, release nutrients in forms that plant roots can actually absorb, and build the kind of loose, aerated, moisture-retaining structure that makes deep root growth possible. When you feed the soil feeds the plant. When you bypass the soil and feed the plant directly with synthetics, the soil starves. The ecosystem dies, and now you have to do the soil's job yourself forever with products you buy from a store. That is the difference between the approach most of us were taught and the Chinese method. Now, I can already hear the reasonable objection. Chinese rice farming and your front lawn in suburban America are not the same thing. I know that. You know that. But the principle King documented wasn't specific to rice, or to Asia, or to any particular crop. It was about soil biology, about what happens when you treat soil as a living system versus a growing medium you spike with chemicals every season. And soil biology works the same way in Guangdong province as it does in Georgia, in Ohio, in Oregon. The microorganisms are different varieties, the grass species are different, the climate varies, but the underlying relationship between healthy soil and healthy plants is universal. What I'm going to give you is that principle, translated into 4 practical steps you can actually do on a typical American lawn, on a weekend, without any special equipment and without spending much at all. That's the bridge between what King observed and what works for you right now. So let's start with the simplest change, the one that costs nothing and starts shifting the system the moment you do it. Stop bagging your grass clippings. I know. For a lot of people, that goes against everything they've been taught. Leaving clippings on the lawn looks untidy. It feels wrong. But here's the reason nobody gives you for why they started bagging in the first place. A grass clipping is roughly 80% water and about 4% nitrogen by dry weight. When you leave a clipping on your lawn and it breaks down, which happens within a few days in normal conditions, that nitrogen goes directly back into the soil, not as a chemical salt, as organic matter which feeds the soil biology, which converts it into a form the grass roots can use slowly and sustainably over time. This process is called grass cycling, and research from university extension programs across the United States has consistently found that grass cycling alone can return the equivalent of 1 full nitrogen fertilizer application to your lawn every single year. 1 free fertilizer application every year, just by not bagging. The concern most people have is thatch, the layer of dead material that builds up at the base of grass and blocks water and air from reaching the soil. But here's what the research actually shows. Short clippings from regular mowing do not cause thatch. Thatch is caused by slow decomposing stem and root material, not by leaf clippings. As long as you're mowing regularly and not taking off more than 1/3 of the blade at once, the clippings break down faster than thatch can form. So the first step is simply this: leave the clippings. Let the lawn begin feeding itself. Free, starting this weekend if you want. That's the first piece, and it's the one most people underestimate. Now here's where things actually start to change at the soil level. Step 2 is where the real transformation begins. And this is the closest thing to the actual practice that King documented in China and Japan over 100 years ago. It's called compost top dressing, and it is the foundation of this entire method. Here's the idea. You take finished compost and you spread a thin layer of it across your lawn. Not a thick mulch, a thin layer. We're talking about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 at the most. Thin enough that you can still see the grass blades poking through, and then you leave it. What happens over the next few weeks is almost invisible, but completely transformative. The compost introduces billions of living microorganisms into your soil. Bacteria, fungi, including mycorrhizal fungi, which form relationships with grass roots and extend their reach into the soil far beyond what the roots alone could access. Protozoa and nematodes. A whole living community that was either absent or severely depleted in your lawn if you've been using synthetic products. These organisms begin breaking down the compost and the existing organic matter in your soil. In doing so, they release nutrients, not in a chemical surge the way synthetic fertilizer does, but slowly and steadily, in proportion to what the grass actually needs. They also produce compounds that bind soil particles together in a process called aggregation, which creates the loose, crumbly, well-aerated soil structure that allows roots to go deep and stay there. This is what those Chinese and Japanese farmers were doing for 4,000 years. Not with bags from a garden centre, with decomposed organic waste from their own kitchens and fields. The principle is exactly the same. Two important practical details before you do this. First, finish compost. You want compost that has fully broken down, dark brown or black, crumbly, earthy smelling, with no visible food or plant material remaining in it. Hot composted material from a bin that's been running for at least 2 to 3 months, or bagged compost from a reputable supplier. Partially decomposed material can introduce pathogens and is too nitrogen concentrated to be safe near grass roots. Second, timing. The best time to top dress is early autumn or early spring, when the grass is actively growing but temperatures are mild. Autumn is ideal because the compost has all winter to integrate, and by spring you'll see results that genuinely surprise you. Do this once a year and you'll see substantial improvement. Do it twice, spring and autumn, and within 2 to 3 seasons your soil will be largely self-sustaining. Now, before we get into the next step, do me a quick favor and hit the like button if this is already shifting how you think about what's been happening in your soil. It genuinely helps these videos reach people who are still stuck in the fertilizer loop. And stay with me, because the next step is the one that changes how often you have to water. And once you understand the logic behind it, daily sprinklers will feel like a thing of the past. Now here's the part that actually makes the watering reduction possible. And I want to be clear that it's not about using less water right away. It's about training the lawn to need less. There's a concept in traditional East Asian agricultural practice that translates roughly as training the root downward. The idea is that how and when you water doesn't just affect hydration, it determines where the root system develops. Here's what's happening in most lawns right now. When you water frequently and shallowly, a little every day or every other day, you're keeping the top inch or two of soil consistently moist. The grass roots have no reason to go anywhere else. The moisture is right there, near the surface. Shallow roots in shallow soil are at the mercy of everything. Heat, drought, a week away from home with nobody running the sprinkler. Here's what happens when you switch to deep, infrequent watering. You water thoroughly. Not a quick 10-minute sprinkle, but a slow, deep soak, long enough that water penetrates 6 to 8 inches into the soil. Then you stop. You let the surface dry. You wait until the grass is just beginning to show mild stress, a slight blue-grey tint to the color, or blades that don't spring back immediately when you walk across them. Depending on your climate and the season, that takes anywhere from 5 to 10 days. Then you water deeply again. Over 6 to 8 weeks of this, the roots follow the moisture downward. The surface is drying out, but deep in the soil, especially after you've started top dressing with compost and the structure is improving. There's moisture retained from the last deep watering, so the roots reach for it. Grass with deep roots is a fundamentally different plant from grass with shallow roots. It can go 2 or 3 weeks without rain in summer and show barely any stress. It self-regulates in a way that shallow-rooted grass simply cannot, and this connects directly to what the compost is doing. Soil with active microbial life and improving organic matter holds significantly more moisture than compacted, depleted soil. So the compost and the deep watering reinforce each other. Better soil holds the moisture longer, which extends the time between waterings, which trains the roots deeper, which builds a more resilient lawn. You're not reducing water because you're being stingy with the lawn. You're reducing it because the lawn genuinely needs less as the system improves. Most people find that within one full growing season, they've gone from watering 5 or 6 times a week to once, sometimes twice. Some people in mild climates drop to once a week year-round, relying primarily on rainfall. That is what the sprinkler retirement actually looks like. Not overnight, but real and permanent once it's established. Step 4 is where this channel's whole philosophy comes together. The kitchen-to-garden connection that makes the Chinese method feel like a complete system, rather than a collection of separate tips. And I want to be upfront with you about this one, because this is the step that sounds the most unusual, and I'd rather earn your trust than lose it over an overclaim. When you cook or rinse rice, the water left behind contains starches, B vitamins, and various minerals that the rice releases during washing or cooking. That water, particularly when it's been lightly fermented, has been used in traditional East Asian horticulture for a long time as a soil conditioner. Here's what we actually know from a practical standpoint. The starchy compounds in rice water feed certain beneficial soil bacteria, including lactobacillus strains, the same family of bacteria you'll find in yogurt or sauerkraut, in any traditionally fermented food. These bacteria are part of a healthy soil ecosystem. Will rice water alone transform your lawn? No, that's not how this works, and I'm not going to tell you it is. But used consistently as part of this system, alongside the compost top dressing that's doing the heavy lifting, it acts as a gentle, free supplement to the soil biology you're building. Think of it less like a treatment and more like a habit. The same way you might take a daily vitamin, not because it fixes everything on its own, but because it supports the larger system you're already running. Practically, here's how to do it. Collect the water when you rinse or boil rice. Let it cool completely. For the traditional approach, leave it in a covered jar at room temperature for 24 to 48 hours. It'll smell faintly sour when it's ready, similar to mild yogurt. That's the fermentation working. Then dilute it, roughly 1 part rice water to 10 parts plain water, and use it when you next water your lawn. Once a week or once every 2 weeks during the growing season is enough. And here's something I want to say directly. You don't have to do this step for the other 3 to work. If it feels like a stretch right now, skip it and come back to it later. The grass cycling, the compost, and the deep watering are the real foundation of this system. The rice water is a refinement, a useful, no-cost addition if you're already cooking rice anyway. Now, alongside that, there's one more free technique that belongs here because it works with everything else you've just done. And this one has very straightforward science behind it. Mow high. Most American lawns get cut too short. It looks neat and tidy, but short grass is stressed grass. Less leaf surface means less photosynthesis, which means less energy going into root development. An exposed soil, without tall grass blades shading it, heats up fast, dries out the surface, and damages exactly the microbial layer you've been building with your compost. Set your mower to the highest or second highest setting. For most American grass types, your fescues and bluegrasses in the Midwest and Northeast, your Bermuda and zoysia in warmer southern states, that means letting grass reach 3 to 4 inches before you cut and never removing more than the top third. In a single mow, longer grass shades its own roots. It retains surface moisture. It sends energy downward into the root system rather than constantly trying to regrow what was just cut off. And when you combine this with grass cycling, leaving those clippings on the surface, you're returning organic matter to soil that's increasingly capable of putting it to use. These last 2 steps cost nothing. They just require doing things slightly differently than you've been taught. And at this point, you have the complete system. Grass cycling, compost top dressing, deep infrequent watering, and mowing high with a rice water supplement if you choose to add it. Every part of it connects to every other part. That's what makes it work. Now let's talk about what to realistically expect, because one of the things this channel is committed to is telling you the truth, even when the truth means results take longer than a product on a shelf promises. Before I go through the timeline, I want to name something that matters. Your results are going to vary. If you're in the Pacific Northwest with naturally loamy, moist soil, you may see soil structure improve faster than someone in Texas dealing with heavy clay, or someone in Arizona working against alkaline, compacted caliche. If you have Bermuda grass or zoysia in a warmer climate, the timing will feel different from someone managing fescue or bluegrass in the Midwest. The principles work everywhere because soil biology is universal, but the pace will be your own. What I'm giving you is the general picture. If your timeline runs a few weeks longer than what I describe, that's not the method failing. That's the method working at the pace your specific soil actually needs. With that said, here's what most people experience. In the first 2 to 3 weeks, don't be alarmed if the lawn looks slightly worse than it did before. When you stop the synthetic nitrogen, the grass loses the chemical hit it's been depending on. It may go slightly paler or less lush for a short period. This is normal. The grass is adjusting to feeding through the soil again rather than directly from a bag. Push through this window. It passes. By weeks 4 to 6, if you've done your first compost top dressing and started the deep watering practice, you should begin noticing subtle changes. The color starts returning, but it looks different from before. Less of that artificial intense green, more of a natural, even tone. And the soil, if you press your fingers into it, will start to feel different. Less like packed clay, more like something with a little give. By the end of the first season, roughly 3 to 4 months in, the transformation is usually clearly visible. The lawn holds moisture noticeably better. Recovery after a hot, dry spell is faster. The grass is thicker and more even because the soil biology is beginning to release nutrients in a balanced, sustained way rather than in spikes and crashes. By the end of the second season, most people have significantly reduced or nearly eliminated their fertilizer use and their watering frequency. The lawn is, in a practical sense, largely self-managing. By year 3, you have the lawn this method was always building toward. One that works with its own ecosystem, feeds from its own organic cycle, and requires your involvement only for mowing and a couple of hours of compost top dressing twice a year. That's not a miracle. That's just what happens when you work with the soil instead of around it. Before I close, let me go through the mistakes that slow this system down, sometimes by months, because getting these wrong is the main reason people give up before the method has had a chance to work. Mistake 1 is over-applying compost. More is not better here. A thick layer smothers the grass rather than feeding the soil. A 1/4 inch, just enough to lightly coat the surface while the grass blades still poke through, is the right amount. Mistake 2 is switching to deep watering too fast. If your lawn has been getting shallow daily water for years, its roots are near the surface. If you suddenly stop all watering and wait 10 days for a deep soak, you may stress the grass before the root system has had time to adapt. Transition gradually. Add a few days between watering cycles each week for the first month, rather than jumping straight to the full, deep and infrequent approach. Mistake 3 is mowing too, soon after top dressing. After you spread compost, give it at least a week, ideally after a watering cycle that helps it begin settling into the soil, before you mow. If you mow too soon, you blow the compost off the surface before it's had time to work its way down. Mistake 4 is expecting grass cycling to work when you let the grass get too long before cutting. If you leave it and then cut off several inches at once, those long clippings pile up, mat together, and don't break down cleanly. Mow regularly, take off only the top third each time, and the clippings will be short enough to disappear within a few days. Mistake 5 is the most important one, and the hardest to avoid. Going back to synthetic fertilizer the moment the lawn looks less than perfect during the adjustment period. The temptation is real. A few weeks in, the lawn is in that awkward phase, and a bag of quick-release fertilizer is sitting in the garage. Using it at that moment is like giving someone recovering from a sugar dependency a chocolate bar. Short-term, it looks like it helped. Long-term, you've restarted the loop and set back the soil biology you were building. Trust the system through the adjustment period. That's the only way to get out of the other side of it. And one more thing, because I know it's sitting there for some of you, this sounds manageable in theory, but you have a full-time job, kids, a life. You don't have time to be out there nursing a lawn. Here's the honest comparison. The routine most people are currently running: weekly or twice-weekly watering cycles, seasonal fertilizer applications, troubleshooting bare patches, reseeding every autumn, takes more ongoing time and more ongoing money than this system does once it's established. The compost top dressing is a couple of hours, twice a year. The watering change is a mindset shift, not more physical effort. The grass cycling requires doing less than you're doing now. No collecting, no bagging, no trips to the green waste bin. The first season asks something of you. You're building something, but you're not doing it in addition to your current routine. You're doing it instead of it, and every season after that, the workload drops. By year 2, most people find they're spending noticeably less time on their lawn than before, because the lawn is increasingly capable of looking after itself. Here's where I want to leave you. 100 years ago, an American scientist went to China and found farmers who had been working the same land for 4,000 years without buying a single product to maintain it. What they had figured out wasn't magic. It was a better understanding of what soil actually needs, and the patience to work with it instead of around it. Feed the soil, return what comes from it. Water deep, not constantly. Let the clippings fall. Add a thin layer of compost twice a year. Those 5 things, done consistently, will build a lawn that is more resilient, lower maintenance, and cheaper to run than anything a bag of fertilizer can give you. It takes a season to start seeing it. It takes 2 to feel the real difference. It takes 3 before you stop thinking about your lawn as a problem, because it mostly takes care of itself by then. That's the goal, not a perfect lawn. A lawn that doesn't need you to rescue it every spring. If this video made you look at your backyard differently, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me what your biggest lawn struggle has been. I read every one, and if you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Next week, I'm showing you the kitchen scrap mixture that replaces commercial weed killer. Safe, cheap, and it works on contact. You don't want to miss that one. I'll see you then.